This is really interesting, and it's something I didn't know about until I read The Age of Insecurity by Astra Taylor. And it's about an experiment that happened in a small town in Manitoba, here in Canada, in the 1970s, and it was regarding universal basic income. So Taylor writes, in the 70s, the Canadian federal government also flirted with a UBI, Universal Basic Income, calling it an idea whose time had come. Yet public officials were predictably worried about moral hazard. What if people stopped working? To figure out what would happen, they funded an enormous social experiment. Beginning in 1974, every resident of Dauphin, a small agricultural town in western Manitoba, was eligible for a minimum annual income, a little over $23,000 for a family of four, adjusted for inflation. In 1979, as progressive conservative governments came to power, the project's funding dried up. As a result, the data wasn't analyzed until 30 years later when Evelyn Forget, a professor at the University of Manitoba, visited the archives and found 1,800 boxes of records. She began crunching the numbers and contacting people who had been part of the program and learned that it had left a remarkably positive impression. Mincome, as the project was known, transformed people's lives, changing their economic circumstances while also relieving mountains of anxiety. Part of Mincome's power stemmed from the fact that it was free of stigma so often associated with public welfare. If you met the income threshold, you were eligible, no questions asked, and no blame or judgment passed. A Mincome handbook from the period describes a UBI, or Universal Basic Income, as an efficient way of ensuring that Canadians have a reasonable and secure income. Residents of Dauphin told Forget that, quote, the money acted as an insurance policy, end quote. Dropout rates waned, hospitalizations fell, and people's mental health improved. Kids went to the dentist for the first time, and their moms took longer maternity leaves or pursued higher education. People still worked, but they worked a little bit less in order to spend time with their families or to study. When teenage boys turned down jobs, it wasn't because they were slacking, it was because they were staying in school. More people turned down employment that underpaid or humiliated them, and some started their own businesses. According to a 2020 analysis, both property crime and violent crime significantly decreased. Improving financial security, it turns out, is an effective way to improve public safety and a way to do so peacefully. And that is about universal basic income. It is from The Age of Insecurity by Astra Taylor.